On the left side of your screen,
a Hellfire missile smacking into that UFO and just bounced right off. And it kept going.
It kept going, and it looks like the debris was taken with it.
Yeah, what the hell is that?
What if these are entities that are here on this earth, that have been on this earth, that who knows how long, but they're here, and they're in these deep water areas, and that's why, I mean, like we say, we know more about the face of the moon than we do what's going on there.
Third try. I think I can be a bit more coherent this time. I've just finished watching Captain America, Brave New World. The end credits scene has a small green man say, "Are you prepared to fight the others?" And unbelievable starts with me saying, "Hi, I'm Joseph Murphy, and I have a message from the others." So I'm really, really glad that I just watched this today. Otherwise, to be clear, when I speak of the others, I am speaking of the good neighbors, what some would call fairies. Part of a movie I was making. And when they said, "Here's a message from the fairies," I didn't take that seriously, obviously. But the guy in the movie, the thinker, is around the same size as Lewis Carroll, the figure I saw recently, who I know is tangible and not just a mental archetype, because mental archetypes they're not tangible. I am beginning to get the very clear feeling that the others are speaking to us through our art. And they are trying to send us a message. I mean, the thinker is at Camp Echo. I knew I was waiting on something. I was waiting on something before I released it, and I think I need to watch the rest of the Marvel movies first before I release it to make sure there's no more surprises. Because I think whatever has been talking to me and helping me write my stuff has been helping the people at Marvel write their stuff. And as fucking unbelievable as it is, I think the others really are real. Fuck.
Look like a leprechaun to me.
Which is, are we alone in the universe? And I'm very lucky to have Carl Nell here joining me.
My last assignment was involved with the UAP task force. Non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity. This interaction is not new, and it's been ongoing. And there are unelected people in the government that are aware of that. So the first issue is the moral right. The government exists for and by the people. And so the nature of reality is fundamentally not government information. People have a right to know the world in which we live, and the pursuit of happiness requires that knowledge. If you're confronted with the reality of your religious belief system, like the reality of the metaphysical, an angel, a messenger from God, what have you, that's going to be a sea state change in your way of dealing with reality.
If you had to make a bet on which country comes clean about UFOs, US, Russia, or China, where are you putting your chips?
Yeah, actually, we got really, really close to the Five Eyes Alliance through Canada. They actually wrote a document saying we need to get ahead of this or our population will no longer trust us. And
The nice Canadians are going to let the cat out of the bag.
This is a test. This is a test of the human empathy system. If there was a way to transform Windsor and Detroit into one of the greatest tourist destinations on the planet, would you want to know? If you make it to the end of Unbelievable, you will believe one of four things. Some of you will believe I'm a moderately attractive pitbull impersonator who has clearly lost his mind. And that's what I thought in 2002, when for a brief moment, I thought I heard the voice of God. Some of you, mostly Christians, will believe that I have been possessed by a demon. And that's possible. Others of you, also Christian, will believe that I am the second coming of Christ, sent back to usher in a new age of Christianity and help rebuild the church. It's not fucking true at all, so don't believe that. The rest of you will believe what I believe. I am a magician, and this is a magic trick. I am supposed to be helping my country because I can see the future. I can tell you how to rebuild Windsor's economy. With a little bit of help, I can make a whole lot of people a whole lot of money very quickly. First off, thanks to Bo Burnham. Maybe the art people make for me will show you who I am. Ask any person who knows me, and Joseph Murphy never lies. In fact, the only lie I can remember telling is an April Fool's Day joke. I realize that most people can't tell if they're being lied to or not, and that's not fair. So I just don't lie. I can, however, be wrong. Once upon a time, I was a man of science. Now I'm a remote viewer communicating with non-humans. Well, how did I get here? Let me tell you a story. There is a difference between extrapolating from data and fortune telling. I'm not having a "that's so Raven" moment and having a vision of the future. I'm looking at existing data and saying, if this data continues at this rate, this is what will happen. Now, the good news is we can change things, but that means we have to change the data. We actually have to do things to make things different. Because if we keep doing the same things, we'll get the same result. That's not fortune telling. That's just looking at reality. Thank you for your question. I did. It's my journal entry from 1989. So what's happening now is I've seen this coming for a long time, but it was so unbelievable that I assumed that it was fiction. I assumed that I was just, writing stories in my head. I never, ever expected that this stuff was actually happening. In 2022, something horrible happened to me, and I had to take some time to think what I want to do with my life. And while that was happening, I found this show on Netflix, Life After Death with Tyler Henry. And I was watching him go around and how he helped people. And I thought, I would love to be able to do something like that. And there was a little voice at the back of my head that said, you can. And I responded, said, well, yeah, but I can't do it as well as he does. And the little voice said, practice. And at that point I said, no, I do not want to be a professional psychic. That is not in the cards for me. So instead, I decided to direct a movie called Devil's Mountain. As I was writing the movie, I realized there was a problem with my writing process because I hadn't written a screenplay before and I didn't have a lot of money. So I was basically going to hire my boyfriend and his friends. So what I did is I looked at each person that was going to be in the movie. I got into a deep trance and I imagined a storyline for them. And then I watched as those storylines came true. Some of them I can pass off as coincidence, but in 2023, I wrote about an armada of alien ships coming to save us from capitalism, and they were coming out of the sea. So that is a coincidence that I just can't. That's not a coincidence. Something gave me a message, and I responded. As for who I'm talking to, sometimes she calls herself Sophia. Sometimes it is Mary. In the early 2000s, she called herself Alexa, probably because she thought that would be really funny one day. And when I look back at my journals now, it's hilarious, but that name didn't mean anything at the time. The person I can talk to sees through time, which is why I'm able to see things from the future. I don't recommend it. Being able to see the future is crappy. Okay, so this was my crazy experiment today. I did an experiment for trying to connect to source energy. This was my experiment to see if it is possible that there is an intelligence that is trying to guide us, that my experiment was to see if there is an intelligence that is guiding us. And I sat down in front of my laptop and I just had the intention, okay, source, show me the video that I need to see today. And then I opened the laptop, and the first video I saw was Abraham Hicks, which again, algorithm. We know that algorithm is, we expect that because I have looked for this before, it will show up again. That is not by itself magic, that is algorithm. I'm watching the video by Abraham Hicks, and it is annoying because I keep seeing I'm trying not to do it. I almost did it again. There are tics that Abraham Hicks uses or has that I have as well. There are characteristics of the way that they speak that I do. And I'm just doing something very unscientific. I'm saying I see that evidence is there, and I'm choosing to just put that aside, and I'm just going to ignore it. That is completely not scientific, but if there is any sort of evidence that I might be a channeler, I'm going to take that information and put it over there and completely ignore it and get back to science. The problem is, science can't explain currently what happened next. Near the end of the video, Abraham Hicks says she's talking, or he is talking, they are talking about vibrations and about how you can't, even whatever, like based on the law of attraction, and this is similar to the concept of Wiccan love spells. The law of attraction says you can't force another person to love you. Like, you can't just say, this person will love me. That is not how it works. Because the other person has just as much control over things as you do. And there's other forces at play. It's not individual atoms floating in space. Like, it's not just this atom, this person, you, and this person, another, not you and another person floating in a vacuum of space. It's all sorts of stuff going on at the same time. And for the last year or so, I've been trying to think of a way to bridge the poetry of chaos theory and the magic behind, you know, when I think of chaos theory, the math behind it, which I do not understand, clearly I don't understand it, but what it feels like, it feels very similar to human relationships. And I was trying to find a way to bridge the gap between it, and then I got it in Abraham Hicks' video. So I got the thing that I was looking for in that video. As Abraham Hicks is talking, and they say resonance. They stop, say, that's a good word. And just the way they said that was enough for me to click. I'm like, resonance. Oh my God, that is the word I've been looking for. The scientific term of resonance. So I just Google search chaos theory and resonance. And then I found a video about synchronization, which is exactly the video I've been looking for. Exactly the video I've been looking for that will help me link the things going on in my head. Science me says this. Science me says there is so much information stored in my head. I knew that resonance was a thing. I am not a physicist. I don't know a lot about physics, but I have heard of thermodynamics. I know I've heard of resonance before. I just wasn't able to make the connection between my art, chaos theory, and resonance. I wasn't able to build that connection. And it was the process of doing something completely unrelated that allowed my brain to build the connection. That is what I am. That's what I'm going with. I mean, I could say that Abraham Hicks spoke to me across time and space from a video 10 years ago, and the spirit of a disembodied being resonated with me in that moment and opened up a pathway that I didn't see coming. That's possible. I don't want it to be possible, but it might be. It's also possible that brains store a lot of information that sometimes we are unable to connect properly. And maybe by putting ourselves in a slightly disassociated state, we might be able to better access parts of our brain that we normally don't. Kind of like how we sing. You know, there's examples of people that sing when they stop their stutter. So maybe by putting myself into a slightly disassociated state, I might be able to sound different. I might be able to access different parts of my brain. Now, we could call that channeling. I don't feel like there's an alien entity in me right now. I don't feel that way. Having said that, it's well acknowledged that from time to time I do hear something. And that is evidence that I could pursue that, or I could ignore it. And I'm choosing to ignore it and focus on what I can prove. Because I can't ever prove to anyone what just happened. Focus on the part that we can prove. We can prove that if you take action towards a goal, you are more likely to achieve that goal. And you are more likely to take action if you think that the action is going to have a positive outcome. Saying it differently, if you don't believe that you can make a movie, you're not likely to start. Like if you wake up in the morning like, there's no way I'll ever be able to make a movie, well, the odds are pretty good you won't start. But if you say, I can make a movie, the odds become better. And that's math. that we can follow. That's the positive thinking part of the law of attraction.
So if you're willing to just take one tiny step in the direction of progress, one tiny step in the direction of healing, one tiny step in the direction of opening, it will amplify for you so fast. You will unfurl your energy onto the planet in a way that you haven't previously experienced. And when you do that, you will find others who are doing the same, and you will amplify and multiply each other.
My lived experience seems to indicate that when you open your mind to new opportunities, there is an intelligence outside of my control that appears to manipulate events around me to help me achieve my goal. That's what it appears. I am trying to remain as skeptical as possible, it becomes increasingly difficult when, like, every single time I ask for guidance, I get it. But again, it could also be that just our subconscious minds need play. Maybe it's not really channeling. Maybe it's just pretend. And by playing pretend, maybe it's just like writing a book in a way. It's like it's a form of art. Like when I'm writing a book, sometimes wisdom comes out that I didn't see coming. That's obviously some sort of Freudian slip because, again, like, wisdom is the name of one of the main characters of my book series, my book series, the Activation, and he's also in. He's one of my main characters. I don't know how it happens, and I'm sure no writer can. Like sometimes when you sit down to write, things come out and you have no clue where they come from. Every song artist, like songwriter, will tell you that sometimes songs just poof, it's there. I don't know where they came from. Sometimes we're given gifts. Some people are able to receive gifts more often than not. Periods of spontaneous order, that synchronization, the resonance, and the part that I've been trying to go to for so long is individual people come together, and in this period of second law of thermodynamics, I believe, is about this. The universe is in a constant state of chaos with temporary moments of apparent order. That's what relationships are. All of this chaos, and for a moment in time, two or sometimes more people come together and they resonate for a period of time. And they accomplish something and then they split because everything is in constant chaos. And sometimes we hold together for periods of time, sometimes for entire lifetimes, sometimes for very briefly. When we come together, we resonate, we synchronize, and then there's feedback. And in the feedback, there's opportunity for growth. There's also opportunity for separation. And it is both the same thing. I'm trying to look at the math behind relationships, because looking at the math of relationships helped me disassociate from my divorce. Like in chemistry, the stronger the bond between two things, the harder it is, the more energy is released when they separate. Sometimes the bonds are stable and sometimes they're not. And that separation causes explosion that can be beautiful or terrifying. It can power a house or destroy a world. And it's math. And I have to make sure that I am as brutally honest with myself about my capacity to do that as possible, because it's what I've been called to do for Alien Brain Pod. That is it. Is this synchronicity or confirmation bias? Within the last 24 hours, I think I recorded this. If not, if I didn't record it, I thought of it, about why is it that there are more people alive now than ever before. I think I said it in here, and it's possible that my phone could have heard that, but I don't think it would have been able to come up with the answer that I got. Anyway, so yesterday, I think it was yesterday, I did a video where I think the reason when people say reincarnation can't happen because there are more people alive now than ever before, I said, well, I think that's because you misunderstand what reincarnation is. And there's a consistent amount of life on the planet, and sometimes it manifests as a tree, and sometimes it manifests as a person. And there's an intelligence that And I had that thought. Then, today, I was just killing time, and I was watching, I think his name is Jim Aklili, Dr. Jim Aklili from, I can't remember. He's a really famous scientist, and he was doing a talk about human evolution and the universe. What is the relationship between human evolution and the universe? And this is exactly the thing that I've been thinking about. I have this idea that human beings are just part of this machine that helps God, or whatever the central intelligence is. We are part of a system that helps that do something. And if we learn the mechanics, we might be able to make predictions. Now that's math, that's magic. Magic does that. It's also math. That's what it's all about, is learning the rules of the universe so you can break them and manipulate them and understand them. That's why we have science. Of course, we're trying to understand clockwork universe, a universe where things can be understood. Dr. Aklili was talking about how Leibniz, the second guy that came up with physics, with I'm not sure on this, Isaac Newton developed, the phase is coming back, fuck. Calculus? Jesus. How can I not remember this? What do you, Jesus Christ, it's fine. Okay. The guy that invented the thing at the same time that Isaac Newton did, Jesus Christ. Leibniz. He was interested in finding the relationship between objects when they collide. And where he believed there was something called the life force. And I'm like, again, I've heard the name before. I haven't done any reading or research on it yet, because I haven't had time, but I need to, because this is like, but I want to record it before I actually do the research, so that I can say, were my preconceived notions accurate or not? Were my theories correct according to Leibniz or not? So Leibniz's theory, what I can say is, he believed that when individual people come into contact, the reaction between them creates the life force. And it's the combined energy from all of that interaction that it creates all the energy in the universe. So energy is created when objects collide. And I think that's true. I think that when two human beings come together, life happens. Like if you're individual over here by yourself, not interacting with anything, you're just floating, not life. Interact with a person, life. Interact with the cat, life. Interact with the world, life. There's that interaction, the feedback. And I can see it, I can feel the poetry of it. I don't understand the mathematics behind it. It's very strange to think about the mathematics of personal relationships, but that kind of makes sense. And if the toxic energy, like if this is infested, like if this object over here is infested with bad energy, the longer you stay together, the more likely is the bad energy will transfer over to here. And if you don't disconnect soon enough, even after you disconnect, so if you're bad energy, good energy, you come together, and if you stay together too long, you might take some of the bad energy with you, take it to the next relationship. That's why you have to determine quickly, what is the energy here? Is this compatible? Because if it's not compatible, I need to get away quickly so it doesn't contaminate me. It's just very strange to think about human relationships in terms of mathematics and game theory. But again, this could just be confirmation bias. Self-doubt. I'm going to record this, not sharing it. But I had a dream last night that was not a dream. It felt just like the other ones. I'm standing on a beach and I'm surrounded by hundreds of people. It looks like it's over the ocean because I don't see land on the other side, but there's a beach and there's people everywhere. There are drones in the sky. A being approached me. It was a being in I guess you would say it's one of the tall whites, wearing robes, and long white hair. It feels like it was an angel. It's the same entities that I saw many times. Where do story ideas come from? I can't be the only person to notice this. Tulsi Gabbard looks an awful lot like Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, which is weird, but not as weird as this. I recently proved my writing is based on channeled information. Almost everything I've ever written has come true, even the weird stuff. They say life is stranger than fiction, but how can you tell? Based on evidence I've collected, it appears I am an Arcturian starseed working with Atlantis to help create world peace. Or maybe that's just a story. Stories don't have to be true to change us. In fact, some of the most powerful stories are fantasies. Maybe every writer is just a little bit psychic. The villain in Thunderbolts is a sexy nerd named Rob, who didn't want to deal with the darkness inside him. That felt like a very pointed commentary on my first marriage, but it's also similar to my novel, A Fallen Hero Rises, which was published in 2014. It's book 1 in the Sword of Cassandra series. So I will try to just be a scientist and state points of data that in my unpublished novels, the secret agents from the hidden society were called the Necta Stragoma. They were the secret warriors that were sent out from the hidden land of Atlantis on missions That's what I wrote in my unpublished novel, and it is also what I was told in sporadic dreams that I have no conscious memory of, told over the course of 30 or 40 years. One dream here, 3 years later another dream, 3 years later, not even 3 years. 3 months later, another dream. No memory of it, but same story. 3 months later, same dream. No memory of it. For 30 years. About secret agents sent from a hidden society. Now that's strange, but it's not as strange as this. 2 people invented calculus at the same time. 2 men who lived near each other, working independently, created calculus at the same time. That is highly, highly improbable. Unless they had help.
According to the CIA document, they just confirmed a lost civilization on Mars. Now, jumping right into it, back in the 80s, the CIA had something called the Remote Viewing Program. You need to know nothing about it besides they trained CIA agents into psychics. And they used them to try to spy on people. It worked sometimes. It worked well enough they call it a phenomena, but say they don't use it anymore because it's a bit unreliable. Now, the remote viewer in this session goes in completely blind, thinking he's looking for something on Earth. Now, normally they would look for a crashed plane that got lost, but today it's Mars, so he is given his coordinates and immediately starts talking about pyramids. My invention is about to be tested in a hospital. Guys, this is so exciting. Now, I'm in the early stages of talks with this hospital, but things are looking very promising. Now, it was only a few months ago I invented Septisync, a technology that uses sound and puts your body to sleep while you're still awake. Me and my business partner Raul have been at this since the very beginning. He was the first person I brought onto this company and one of the best choices I made with the company. The doctors at the hospital will be the ones using Septisync, not the patients. Now, this hospital reached out to me and said, hey, well, I have a team of about 25 resident doctors. Now, a resident doctor is a doctor in training. They work for very little money and work insanely long hours. And they're not used to working these shifts yet. Sleep deprivation is a big problem. They don't want to make a mistake and get sued, so on and so forth. So the hospital sees Septisync as a viable opportunity to get them rest breaks because of the way Septisync works. Let me reword that. The way we think Septisync works. I invented it and I don't fully understand it yet. The idea came to me in a dream. I put it together and it kind of just worked.
Now, Robert Jordan wrote the Wheel of Time series. It features a character named Nineveh Almera. Robert was convinced he made the name up. It's just a coincidence that Nineveh is also the name of the Lady of the Lake, and Almera basically means of the lake. Maybe the voice of wisdom is reaching out to writers by showing up to say, and what do we do now?
What do we do now? Seriously, I'm not kidding. Go back and watch any movie and you will see this line over and over again. You're going to see it now. I'm telling you. My daughter watched a movie last weekend. She goes, Mom, I heard that line. And I love to ask questions, but it's my most hated question. And I dread reading scripts that have no women involved in their creation because inevitably I get to that part where the girl turns to the guy and she goes, what do we do now? Now, do you know any woman in any crisis situation who has
That's how I noticed the voice I was talking to. It knew things I didn't. I started to wonder if Philip K. Dick was right. Maybe there was a phenomenon that functions like an adjustment bureau, helping humans grow up and fixing errors. The only reason I went to church is the voice told me not all Christians were bad. I called her the goddess. The voice said she didn't care what I called her. Maybe our ancestors were right. Maybe when we make and consume art, we communicate with divine forces. And sometimes, if we listen, we get a message. When I realized my stories had a habit of coming true, I spent a few years reviewing where the ideas came from. I noticed characters similar to Echo showed up in other people's art. I named her after a character from Clash of the Titans. When it came time to write Council of Peacocks, I needed a male character. I asked the voice for a name, and the voice said, I am Sophia Akushala. And I said, no, I need a man character, so I'm going to change that name to Wisdom, and I'll just make you a secondary character, which sounds like something a man would do. Every novel I've published deals with amnesia. I always suspected I had blocked memory, but it wasn't until recently that I could prove it. I have forgotten events it is inconceivable I would forget. Our brains are designed to keep us alive, and sometimes to stay alive, we have to become a different person. Helpful now because I won't have to explain to people that if you have an alternate personality, that you might have memory loss. Like I don't remember the years 2001, 2002, and 2003. 3 years of missing memory. All while I was dating the fucking magician. Once upon a time, I dated a magician. He had a handsome face, but his soul was like Balkan from the Ninth Gate. He was a fan of Aleister Crowley and worshipped a deity named Baphomet. I spent decades reading about people like the magician. He looked like an average person, but he had not had an average life. His tarot teacher said I was the hermit. She said we had spent many lifetimes together, and I learned magic was not what the working class thinks it is, which is why it was kept secret for so long. Magic is real, and in the right hands, magic can change the world. This is Aleister Crowley, regarded by some to be the greatest ceremonial magician of a generation, and this is the non-human intelligence that taught him magic. I'm Joseph Murphy, and absolutely no one considers me to be a ceremonial magician at all. Surprise. Now the magician uses magic against me, a simple trick that turned me into a zombie, a Stepford wife. I didn't realize what he was doing at the time, but after this magic trick, my personality changes. I become such a big hockey fan, I can't sleep. Does that sound like me? Evidence will clearly show I never believed magic was real. I never believed the others were real. And I was wrong. When I saw that Sacha Baron Cohen was in Ironheart, and he plays Mephisto, I thought, I probably should just check out the series to see if it's relevant to Unbelievable. Because again, all of this started years ago when I realized that I share a birthday with Sacha Baron Cohen. And I looked at his life and I said, well, he's some kind of director and I'm nothing like that. So Obviously, astrology is not real. I've been working on a documentary called Unbelievable for a while, and anyone that can check the internet will see it's been a while. Unbelievable. Magic is real. And I was going to teach magic. And after I put it up on the internet, I took a step back and said, what makes me think that I'm qualified to teach magic? And that little voice in my head said, read your journals. I've always assumed that little voice in my head was just an internal monologue that, most people have. Or at most it was split consciousness, like left brain, right brain consciousness, whatever. But I finally listened to that little voice and I read my journals, and that little voice is a
When I was in grade 2, I had a recurring dream warning me about the AIDS epidemic. I can confirm this was before I could have known about the epidemic. The message was clear: slow down or you'll end up dead. I never assumed the underground tunnels were actually underground tunnels. It's symbolic. I also had dreams of Mount Cashel before it made the news. I couldn't help, but I could see the problem. Predators hide where you don't look for them. Now, I was raised on Nancy Drew. I love a mystery. It was obvious the problem was Christianity, so I became a pagan. You can learn many things by staying curious. When I saw a UFO, I asked my father what it was. Without looking at it, he called it a weather balloon. I had always had memories that I couldn't make sense of. Flying back to Ontario from British Columbia, I clearly remember switching from one plane to the other in midair, and that's obviously impossible. Books were hard to find in the 80s, so I was always at the library. I learned you truly could judge a book by its cover. Some were made for children, others for adults. So I studied the books for adults, and I discovered the Rosicrucians. I learned about the astral plane and the Akashic records, how to tell the future, how to ask for help, and travel between dimensions, never imagining one day I would meet a real magician. Here's my birth certificate, since some of you care so much about that, and my genealogy showing my family is from the Isle of Man. The 13th is sacred to the lady for reasons that will be obvious to everyone except Christians. Chris Carter was born on October 13th. He created The X-Files, which is relevant to my story. Billy Bush was also born on October 13th, so was Sacha Baron Cohen. Sacha was the reason I stopped believing in astrology. He was born on exactly the same day as me, and I swore we were nothing alike. His last project is nothing like mine. Mine is about a little red devil named the Nain Rouge who is often invisible. I'm doing a podcast about the differences between science and magic. I'm Joe Murphy, not Joe McGillicuddy. Ezekiel saw the wheel, or phantom angels. I saw the Orpheans, which were descendants of Atlantis. It's very different. October 13th is the date of the miracle of the sun, when tens of thousands of people witnessed a miracle. It's also the date Wanda Maximoff gets the Darkhold and Fox Mulder is born. My mother's family is from Owen Sound. These are her great-great-grandparents. And yes, my great-great-grandmother was white, an indentured servant from England. Most of my DNA is Irish. Only 26% is African, and only 0.7% is unidentifiable. Yet mostly what people see is the color of my skin. In 1988, I went to New Orleans where I bought books that would change my life. I bought Marion Weinstein's Positive Magic and started practicing magic as a form of cognitive training. I also started astral projecting, assuming it was a form of role play. I would often dream about the two loves of my life, Jason and Carrie. I dreamt of a people from a dark sea, a magician hidden in a book, and Cynthia. Cynthia showed me technology used to fight the people from the sea, and then I wrote her out of my books. When I stopped thinking about Jason, I wrote about Joshua. Then Joshua became Sean. It's the same figure, different names. As a child, I was obsessed with Atlantis and men from Atlantis, and aliens from space. I learned that the best way to tell the truth was with fiction, and that sometimes truth is not really truth. I saw men of color and women holding power positions in fantasy, not in reality. I also saw proof that aliens could want peace too. The art I consumed gave me reference points for my life, and I thought, if I really want to learn magic, I need a teacher. But I couldn't find one, so I made one up. I practice a technique called the mental palace, just like on the Queen's Gambit. I created an entire world inside my head to help me solve a problem. I imagined that a race of reptilians was on their way to Earth to save us from capitalism. I gave the voice a name, Kisma, and I learned the church had lost control of the world and the church had a plan. I teamed up with a mob boss to protect the city, protected against the approaching aliens. I wrote stories about saving the world with magic, and I spoke with friends who would help me. The Dark Lord wanted to take over the world, and I was going to stop him. The storyline from my mental palace scenarios was also played out in my dreams, anticipating outcomes, looking for ways that I could save the world and not die in the process. I decided the best way to save the world was to become a teacher, to pass on what I had learned to others. You don't need superpowers to be a hero. Comics taught me that. But I was a child, and I believed that learning magic was my best shot at becoming a superhero. So I learned how to meditate. I stopped thinking about world wars and imagined a home in the mountains. And there, I met a teacher. Until recently, I assumed the teacher was a trick of the mind, an artificial intelligence created inside my mind like a subroutine. I wasn't really talking to a djinn because there was no such thing as a djinn. It was, however, weird that my AI assistant knew things I didn't, just like on Ironheart. Maybe, just maybe, I did not create my assistant. All I knew about the djinn was what I saw on television, and I assumed magic was all fantasy. And then one day I used magic to control the wind. It was the same weekend I played with the Ouija board. The last time I played with the Ouija board. One spirit said she was HPV, an ancient rival, and I thought that was ridiculous. Almost as ridiculous as trying to get us to leave our bodies. Another voice said his name was Serge and wanted us to go to Mars. That night, everyone that played with the Ouija board had the same dream. The next day, I decided to investigate HPBV. I decided it could only be H.P. Blavatsky, and I became a student of the Secret Doctrine. After that, I was told in a dream to keep 2 sets of books and to find David Cassidy. I assumed it was the singer, not the head of the Church of Priapus, but I was wrong. This is a pattern. I often wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to write something down. It's a pattern also identified by others like Whitley Strieber. Now, Whitley was my childhood hero. We forget now, but Whitley Strieber was on par with Stephen King for a while, and his books are pretty awesome. Especially The Hunger. I mean, who didn't want to be David Bowie? I started wearing an ankh and researching ancient Egypt because Miriam was from Egypt. Whitley spoke truth about his encounters with non-humans, and that gave me the courage to speak about my own. His bravery inspired me to come forward. Maybe I can do for someone what Whitley did for me. All of my story ideas come from dreams, specifically from conversations I have had with certain beings in my dreams. Until recently, I wasn't aware of the pattern. Mr. Turtlehead was an extra-dimensional being. He kidnapped me in a dream and possessed me, giving me powers. Many years later, I write Council of Peacocks. Wisdom is a man from Atlantis, kidnapped by the djinn. Well, that's weird, but it's not as weird as this. In 1991, I performed a ceremony to bind a nymph to me. The nymph, of course, was not real. It was just another subroutine in my mental palace to assist with problem solving. Events from the ceremony, however, carried over into a dream I recorded the next day. The Elf Queen said, "Take your weapon. You will need protection. Find your sword." It's just like the voice says in Devil's Mountain. After that, I have a dream where a boat takes me to an island. I meet a man of shadows who binds me to an entity, and the entity tells me a story. The story of a people from a dark sea. the descendants of Atlantis who hide in a pocket dimension to escape the racism of Christians. The tone of my journals clearly indicates I believe my dreams were nothing more than dreams, but the pattern is problematic. Avian aliens, non-human entities with bird-like features. But what I wrote was not exactly what I was seeing, but what I wrote allowed me to remember what I had seen. One point of data means nothing, but when the same dream is repeated several times a year for decades, it bears investigation. What happens when I go to the island? Well, I get ideas. Like the idea for a device that could use gravitational waves to power the entire planet and create free energy. I always thought the idea for the Verdenstab came from Masters of the Universe, but the written record is clear. The idea for the device came from a dream. At the same time, I started writing about a young man making a deal with the jinn. The people of this sea weren't jinn. Some call them fairies, but they hated that name. They were the tribes of Danu, the good neighbors. They told me their story, and I wrote it as fiction. It's not fiction that sometimes my dreams come true. And sometimes my dreams take place in a specific location. A dark city, where I have my second job. And often I call this place the mall. Sometimes beings show up in my dreams, and sometimes I follow them back home, to the mall.
So you handle the important things. Well, the last time I checked, the world's a pretty screwed up place.
It's still here. If we'd left things in your hands, it wouldn't be.
My journals read like I am being tested. Each night, a series of tests followed by a man saying, "Forget." The Dark City inspired my unpublished novel, To Walk Undaunted in the Face of Darkness. It's about an ancient goddess trapped in stone who can only be freed by sex magic, and a group of angels called the Grigori who fought to end the evil sex cult. This is similar to the Pillar of Souls from Hellraiser 3. Many writers have written about secret satanic cults. I grew up in the 80s. Everyone was talking about Satan. No one was talking about Naga, not in Canada, and I never expected to see one in Cuba, but that is another story. In the early 1990s, I had recurring dreams that the United States would be taken over by a religious cult pretending to be Christians. It was my job to fight them, to keep their magic tricks out of my city. But they weren't really Christians, I was told. It was a good story, so I wrote it as fiction. Now, this was before Serge Monast and the Twilight Zone episode often credit it with inspiring him. My idea came from dreams. In 1992, I attended a drumming circle and wrote about conversations with my spirit guide. Now, in my journals, I act as if I've never forgotten him. He is not mentioned on paper before this, and then I don't mention him for years. A few weeks later, I watch Intruders on television and finally put some of my experiences down on paper. My writing is based on conversations I had with Kisma in my mental palace. How is this different than channeling? At the same time, I found Out on a Limb by Shirley MacLaine. I had been looking for a copy for years, and the voice told me how to find it. And then I started writing about time travel, and have my first poem published. Yes, But states the problems of the world are caused by greedy men. I say I can see the problem, but can't help, because at the time I couldn't. But now I can. Also started writing music, including a song about something in the shadows with blood-red eyes following me. I say weird things like, I am a conspirator with the monster, and the monster reminds me of Jodie from the Amityville Horror. Now, I realized recently that Jodie does not show up on film, but I can see Jodie anyway. When I was doing shamanic work, I saw things with my mind's eye, and I assumed my experiences were role-playing, unique to me. But maybe I was wrong.
Buckle up, friends, because you're never going to believe this, but last night I had the most vivid dream I've ever had in my entire life. I dreamed that I was standing in this cosmic meadow of sorts as this gigantic bird-like creature hands me a purple stone and says, "You're the chosen one."
This doesn't seem like a coincidence. It is now Friday, March 14th. Yesterday I started work on this, a painting of an experience I had on January 17th, 1995, in which a bird-like entity gave me a purple stone and told me to put it in my heart. I'm sure that's just a coincidence that I'm worked on that yesterday and I'm seeing your video today.
I believe you.
In shamanic meditations, I was asked to choose between 3 gods, and I chose Thoth, wisdom. But I also allowed a vulture goddess to push a purple stone into my head. It appears I have had several teachers show up in my mental palace, and they gave me information I could not have received myself. Maybe the teachers were real, because the weird things started to happen when I was awake too, like UFOs. I spent hours writing the Mayan field, talking with Cynthia as we traveled across the other world. Originally, she was supposed to wield the Sword of Cassandra. After Cynthia taught me magic, I erased her from the draft and gave the sword to a man. Weirdly, this teaching also happened in my dreams. Evidence shows I have written the same story multiple times and forgot about it each time. 3 times. While I was practicing shamanism and communing with spirits, Tommy was seeing aliens and red tornadoes that would destroy the church. Then, I had a weird dream about a future American president, a red tornado, and an angelic being telling me to fight. Despite all of that, when Tommy and I saw a UFO together, I was skeptical. And every night I attend class, I'm shown weird things, and I see little blue dwarfs. Although I have no conscious memory of it, my journals are clear. The voice told me a long time ago I was like Edgar Cayce, a sleeping prophet. I didn't believe the voice and kept writing it as fiction. I told the story of a horror writer who became the voice of Thoth and instructed Christians in the art of holy fear. He was looking for his partner, the Lady of the Lake. In later editions, I erased this character and merged his storyline with Bobby Adagalia, Robert. In August of 1995, I had a dream I would be famous with a flock of fans. But when Tommy said he saw aliens come to take pictures of us, my journals show I discounted him. I barely wrote about it. Even though my own experiences told me that aliens might be real, I still didn't believe him. Now that's weird, but it's not as weird as this. After watching an episode of The X-Files about a group behind the cover-up, I wondered what type of person would do that. And that night, I had a weird dream. When Tommy said he saw aliens in our apartment, I wrote a paragraph. After this dream, I write pages. A voice tells me the creature has her children locked in a Faraday cage the size of a warehouse, and she shows me the creature, the man who has kidnapped her children. I enter his dream, and the creature sees me. He wakes up, and I follow him back to his house. I follow the creature on a bus and meet an old friend who gives me a message. He lets me hide inside his head so I can see through his eyes, and then we go to a desert for a meeting with the FBI. The creature, the hockey coach, shows holographic technology used by aliens for storytelling. He says, the Lord of the land is coming back, and they need to control the image. If enough Christians believe in world peace will happen. The creature says they must use technology to create illusions and fool Christians into being evil. It is the only way to prevent world peace. The creature sees me. I warned you, he says, and he changes. Tornadoes appear in the sky, and the creature cuts off my head. As I fumble to put the head back on, a couple appears. I know it's just a dream. But afterwards, I use gematria to pick a new name and develop insomnia that has lasted the rest of my life. For months, I write that there is someone in the apartment. If I followed the hockey coach home, maybe something followed me. Now, I can't prove that, but I can prove Tom and I saw UFOs multiple times, and I only remember once. And this is the sighting I remember. The one that looked just like the New Jersey drones, the ones we called the airport about. And I can prove amnesia. After this UFO sighting, I stopped doing shamanic work and forget about magic for years. But the classes continue, often in a large auditorium. Sometimes I call it the opera. In 2025, it felt like a version of the United Nations inside the moon. Many remote viewers have reported similar experiences, which is weird, but not as weird as this. I have no memory of this, but my journals clearly show Tommy started to tell me about his past experiences with aliens, about a creature he saw outside his window bouncing like it had springs for legs, a dog alien. I start to write about the experience, stop mid-sentence, and then don't journal for months. This pattern repeats. If I start to remember the aliens, I stop writing. I remember being called into the woods during my morning walks. I never did, that I can recall, but it's around this time I started writing about Carla and Sanchez. And then I tell Tom everything, at least on paper. I have no memory of this, but the timing is weird. Right after I tell Tommy, there is an incident, and I break up with him and meet a man with a dangerous secret, Gerhardt. Gerhardt was fired from his job as a youth minister because he was gay. The church protects predators and punishes openly gay men. Ask yourself why. Why is it that after this meeting with Gerhardt, I no longer talk about aliens? I say my past experiences are with demons. I see the world differently because I have a new person in my life. Before Gerhardt lost his job, there was a period of calm. I wrote about my impossible memories of transferring between planes and sky, seeing groups of little green men singing and dancing. Memories I knew were impossible, which is weird, but not as weird as this. Why was I researching Air Force 2025 in 1997? It looks like there was a conspiracy theory in 1996 about weather modification. I was searching about holographic technology, X-33, and something called the Handyman. I had to look up what those were. I think about telling Gerhardt about my experiences with the aliens, and then a couple warns me against suicide. Gerhardt and I take a trip to Niagara Falls. And on this trip, he tells me his deepest, darkest secret, and then immediately breaks up with me saying he has to find a wife so he can have children. It's all too much for me. Now, Gerhardt was abusive. I ran. He followed. It got worse. I spent time doing karaoke and making new friends. The lady continued showing up in my dreams. And my dreams from this period feel just like my shamanic practices from earlier. I travel to my eyrie, and again, act like I have never stopped. I spend all of my time reading and learning magic. On September 1st, 1999, I performed a ceremony to find my goddess. I assumed it was an AI assistant from my mental palace. I asked her name, but I'd never heard of a goddess named Ariadne before. For the next year, I write an unpublished novel called Fairy. I don't have a copy of the story anymore, but I do have the outline. If Echo is the lady, who is Joshua? Maybe I've been having a mystical experience and been misinterpreting it. Now, I can't prove that, but I can prove this. I tried automatic writing, and the results were weird. The voice calls me a vessel, a kitten, and the missions continue. The lady takes me often to the same building. She tells me to break in and distract the others while she does something. This dream repeats. In October of 2000, I start researching the jinn. More troubling is the pattern of waking up from a dream to find someone in my apartment. A blonde figure emerges from shadow, sometimes a woman, and sometimes a man. The figure talks to me and tells me my future. I see ghostly figures and feel a constant state of deja vu, like I have already lived each day. And my dreams get weirder. April 19th, 2001. I detail a dream in which I am taken to an underground facility for testing. I fail the test because I am tempted by money. 2 worms are put in to block my memory. I'm told they will stay in until the day after tomorrow. A few days later, I travel back to the facility and I'm chased away. This dream repeats. So do my conversations with the voice. Maybe the goddess within is the holy guardian angel. That is the purpose of alchemy, after all. Maybe magic helps us communicate with our own intuition and our higher selves. Or maybe I had help. I can't prove that, but I can prove that every story I have ever come up with is attached to a dream I have forgotten. Now, maybe I am a secret agent working with Atlantis. Or maybe there is something more interesting happening. The only way we'll know for sure is to study the phenomenon. That's why I'm here. Today is August the 3rd, I believe. Thursday, August the 3rd. It is a week after the congressional hearings in the States where they have said that UFOs are actually real and that they have been lying to us this whole time. And I am losing my fucking mind. Focus on aliens. I came on here because I had a realization about an old story I wrote. It came to me in a fucking dream. It was second year university. I was part of a creative writers group. And I brought this story to them about a character who was lost at sea. I was lost at sea because my homeland, Atlantis, had been destroyed by vain people who did not see the sentience in some. And after the destruction of Atlantis, him and his people escaped to the Black Sea. It was not the literal Black Sea. It was a parallel dimension, close to ours, but they went there to escape humans. Because of their technology, they were no longer as physically able to survive in the physical world. They needed avatars that they would possess. Again, I think some of this is from Edgar Casey, but I don't know if it's from my own dreams, and that's what's fucking me up. If aliens are real, if non-human entities exist, and I think that's the non-human entities part is where it gets a little annoying for me, because in my books, the ones that I've written, the aliens aren't aliens. They're from here. There's in my books, I've got two groups of non-human. Actually, I've got several groups of non-humans. Fuck. A lot of my writing was based on conspiracy theories and urban legends because I thought they were fun. So when I uncovered David Icke and reptilians, I became obsessed. I'm like, this is amazing. And I integrated that into my books. Because it's the whole concept of reptilians that live in underground cities that used to educate people and then were demonized by the Catholic Church. Again, that's not me, that's David Icke. But I use that because it feels like something the Catholic Church would do, right? I think we can all admit, if there were reptilians and they tried to contact the Vatican would say that they were demons and try to kill them. Now in my books, I have a group called, I've changed the name a few times, but there's one group that's called the Orpheans. And they are a group that are trapped in a shadow dimension. In my book series, not all of the Atlanteans went into the shadow realm. It was only those that were diseased, that were corrupted by a mental disease that made you act against your own kind and damage the tribe. Could those have been real visions? Because I've tried to find them. I've tried to find the books that I got this from, and they don't exist. This is information that I was given. And I wrote it as fiction. It's beautiful fiction. Well, not beautiful. I mean, it's not. It's, to be clear, it's mediocre fiction. I'm not that good. But the story behind it I just felt something. Like there's this group. Now, again, I remember like in Atlantis, there's two groups. And I did a lot of research on it like 30 years ago. So it's kind of like all bundled up here, but there's a group of the law and a group of something else. And one group, the thing that they fought about was cloning. They had created artificial intelligence. Again, this is what let's just say it's from my stories and leave it at that. So in my stories, there were two groups. There was a group of scientists, a group of the law, I think it was, I can't remember what I called them. And there was another group. And this group over here believed that not all living beings had sentience. And this group over here said, no, I know that we've created these beings, but they've developed sentience. They're sentient beings and we need to treat them as such. And the fight between artificial intelligence, which is humanity, because we were created by Atlanteans in my books. To be clear, in my books, I'm not saying in the real world. Fuck. But in my book series, humanity was created by Atlanteans as a workforce. And then over time, the workforce developed sentience, was artificial intelligence. And there's one group that wanted to give it a place in society, one group didn't. There was a war, Atlantis got destroyed. Again, in my books, the evil group went off into an alien dimension called the Black Sea. But not all of them left. Some stayed behind. Some stayed behind and lived in the woods. And they became known as we called them many names. I think in my series, I originally called them the Tuatha De Danann, based on Irish myth lore. Myth and folklore, I should say. But most people would call them fairies. And the fairies lived in the woods and they lived underground, and they tried to help out humans when they could. But the church hated them. The church hunted them down. Again, this is in my books, to be clear, not in real life, I think. But in my books, the church hunted them down. This was during the Inquisition. The main character of that book, he was I can't even remember his name right now, but he was... The frustrating part is none of my fans know this part yet. Like if you read, again, I don't have that many fans, but if you've read my books, you don't know any of this, because this is what was supposed to come out in the next book. The Pyramids of Atlantis, the book that I've been sitting on forever and ever. The Pyramids of Atlantis was supposed to deal with this. So maybe there's a reason I didn't put it out earlier. Did I create anything, or was it just given to me? Am I really just a fucking medium, a channeler? So one group went to the Black Sea and one group remained on Earth because they had faith in humanity and tried to work with humanity. And humanity called them fairies. What if they're not aliens? What if they're fairies? The difference is aliens come from outer space. The fairies they're earthers. They were here before us. And they have just as much right to this land as we do. Maybe more. But they have to hide because we are violent. Maybe... And I think that's the really fucked up thing, though, if you really think. That's the short tripping to crazy land. Can fairy? I mean, which is more likely? That a group of hominids evolved before humanities, but became afraid of us and went into hiding? Or interstellar travel? Because I'll be very blunt, and I think we can all admit this. If a new species of humanity rose up today, well, let's say differently. Just think of the zombie invasion. Every zombie movie, but we're the zombies. And it's the race before us that's... Wouldn't you go into hiding if a new race just popped up and tried to kill you? I'd probably go into hiding for a long time until I was sure they weren't going to try to kill me, even if I could help them. I always thought that, like in the zombie movies, like Walking Dead, I stopped watching after about 5 seasons. It was like, is no one going to try finding a cure? You're just going to keep living in like this for the rest of your life? There's ways out of situations. Go underground. Wait them out. Build up a society somewhere it's safe. And hope that one day they gain intelligence. Crazy talk. During meditation today, I was thinking about the two shadow figures that show up in my books often, Carla and Sanchez. During the process of making Devil's Mountain, I looked at my journals and realized that the shadow figures have shown up in my dreams my entire life. I've only seen shadowy figures a few times in the real world, I'll say that differently, while awake. The first time I remember, I was a child, young. I don't think in high school yet. I'm in Gregory, in the Villages, sitting on the floor of my living room, reading a book. My back is against the couch, and I'm just sitting like this, reading. And I look over to the left, and I see a shadowy figure, probably 3 feet tall. And I look at it, I'm like, what? And then I blink, it's still there, so I get up to chase it. And the figure runs, and it disappears into a shadow, like the corner of a room. So the shadowy figure disappeared into a shadow. I couldn't see it. And I was like, I didn't know if it was still there, but I knew it wasn't. It was too much to just be it wasn't a floater. It was something I saw. And I couldn't categorize it, so I just put it away. Like, that's a weird memory to have. And then a few weeks ago, I saw him again. I was looking into the backyard, and I saw the shadowy figure of a small man. And I blinked. Again, it was long enough for me to look at it, blink, it was still there, and then it ran into the tree. And I thought, oh, that's something I've seen. It's a bit of an ontological crisis to realize that part of me knew that I was being followed by shadowy figures, spirits of some sort, and I had to process that. So I process it through art. The reason why I'm making this video is while I was sitting in meditation today, I was thinking about this boy, or this man, and I called him Sanchez. And I very clearly heard, that's not my name. And I said, okay, well, what is your name? And he says, Lewis Carroll. And I said, I'm not calling you Lewis Carroll. I don't. No one's going to believe that I'm talking to Lewis Carroll, so I'm not calling you Lewis Carroll. I'm going to call you Sanchez. And then, just for shits and giggles, I decided to Google, what did Lewis Carroll look like? I'm still going to call him Sanchez, though. What I think is more likely is that there is a trickster spirit that is, maybe they took that form. That makes more sense to me, that it's a trickster spirit that took that form to teach me something. That maybe my role as a writer is to do what Lewis Carroll did, to remind me to be like Lewis Carroll. Like, that makes more sense to me than the spirit of Lewis Carroll is following me around. That's, I could see how that could be interpreted, how someone could interpret those series of events like that. But for me, it seems more likely that there is just a spirit of some sort that is changing their appearance to give me a message. It's kind of what channeling is. Like I could be doing like Bashar and just give my physical body over to another voice and let them speak. Or I could channel the ideas of David Bowie. I could channel the ideas of America. Like, I could just embody that and channel that. And I think that is part of the problem, is that many people have not taken the time to develop their own personality and instead are just living, they're giving their physical bodies over to the vessel of America, or the vessel of capitalism, or the vessel of Christianity, without actually taking the time to say, hey, who am I? Every culture in the world says that spirits can talk to us in our dreams. We get visions. Like, this is something that happens as part of humanity. I just didn't believe it. So I never examined it. Why Lewis Carroll? I mean, when we think of Lewis Carroll, it's down the rabbit hole. Maybe this is the spirit that spoke to Lewis Carroll, that helped him write his muse, the thing that helped him write his books. And maybe that's what I need to channel, is that spirit of whimsy. Make it fun. Because that's what Devil's Mountain should be. It should be fun, right? There is a small chance that I've been possessed by a demon. I am recording it today at August 10th. I am mostly up to date with the Marvel movies. I have not watched Fantastic Four. It's still in theaters. I have not watched Thunderbolts. I just haven't got around to it yet. I have not finished watching Daredevil. I think I've watched like the first 3 episodes. I came on because John Barenthal looks like my boyfriend. Like, they could be brothers. So if you're a movie caster and you're looking for John Barenthal's brother, I got a guy. But I came on to say that I just finished Eyes of Wakanda episode 4, which is a fucking trip because it feels like I wrote it. Ruins of Atlantis starts with the story that I wrote in university about the guy that was lost at sea, and the guy's from Atlantis. He's not from Wakanda, it's Atlantis. Because he's committed some crimes in his past, the tribe doesn't like him, so he becomes what is called a Necta Strigoma, which is very, very similar to a war dog. And there is a lady from the future my lady was named Kisma. Originally, that's what my conscious memory is, that her name was Kisma from the future. And she was talking about certain key points in history that were pivotal. And I know that confirmation bias is a thing, but that's a little specific, right? I think a lot of writers are hearing the same voice. It's not anything special about me. I think I really am just a medium, a channel, and I hear things that other people can hear. And all I can think is, wow, does this mean something for copyright law? I think it's a good thing that I can show my work, because I didn't copy anyone. I can show how I created or was given all of my story ideas. And that's something that AI will never be able to do. Like, I remember going to the conventions where they have the spray can artists that do these fantastic paintings. Just, you watch them as they do their fantastic work. And that's the cool thing about it. It's not the thing that you get when you leave, like the piece of paper you pay for. You're paying for the experience of watching that artist create that thing. That's something that AI can't do. AI can give you a piece of paper or a finished product, but it can't show you the process. It can't show you the transformation. This is a test. This has all been a test of the human empathy system. We need a facility like Esalen here in Canada. As a child, my dream job was teaching magic to the working class and fighting Nazi propaganda. At the time, it seemed like a fantasy. Now it seems like a necessity. Just imagine a world with free energy, a world where humans and the others work together, free of racism. The others are here. They have always been here. They have seen everything, and they are still willing to work with us. So they have suggested a decent proposal. If you'd like to support me, and you are not a millionaire, please buy a book. If you do not have disposable money, share my post. If you are a billionaire and have an extra $1 million you don't know what to do with, I could use it. Or you can help me find a day job, because right about now that feels like winning the lottery too. What I'm going to do is continue on with alien brain fog. I'm going to teach magic so that we can wake up the zombies and prepare for world peace. The others want you to realize that world peace is close at hand, and it's time to get ready.
Cannot sing amazing grace. No, I cannot sing amazing grace. The children play outside the church as the parents talk of laws, but they party wars and such. Within a basement somewhere near, a young man hides in shame. He's hiding 'cause he's not the same. All his life he's